Single dad offers mysterious vial to blind, deaf and mute boy. Then the boy is cured against all doctors' odds. But he was the son of a millionaire. And upon analyzing the vial, she discovers something shocking. Rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The sweltering afternoon heat turned the asphalt of the bustling city into a furnace, scorching through the soles of worn shoes. The single dad, 30 years old, hurried through the crowded streets, his striking features a sharp contrast to the worry etched on his face. Bills were piling up at home, and his mechanic's salary barely covered the basic needs for himself and his 4-year-old daughter, a frail little girl who seemed only 2 due to her delicate health. As he turned the corner towards County General Hospital, where he was taking his little one for another checkup, something stopped him short. There, sitting alone on the steps of the main entrance, was a boy the same age as his daughter. The child, visibly abandoned, clutched a crumpled piece of paper in his small hands, fluttering in the breeze. What was most shocking was the child's condition. His vacant eyes didn't focus on anything. He didn't react to the sounds around him, and he didn't make any noise, clearly blind, deaf, and mute from birth. The man's heart clenched. As a father, the sight of that helpless child stirred a compassion within him that he couldn't explain. He approached slowly, crouching down in front of the boy. The paper the child was holding contained only a phone number scribbled in shaky handwriting, nothing else. He tried to call the number, but the line had been out of service for months. Looking around, he realized that no one was paying attention to the abandoned child. Hospital staff rushed past, and passers-by went their way without noticing the little human being who desperately needed help. At that moment, a distant memory came to mind. He reached into his shirt pocket, where he had kept a small glass vial for years, an inheritance from his late grandfather. The old researcher had been a mysterious man who worked decades in pharmaceutical labs before passing away. Before leaving, he had given his grandson that vial containing a crystalline liquid with specific instructions. Use only in a moment of extreme need, when someone was really in need of help. His grandfather always said that this substance had special properties, developed over years of secret research. Without hesitating any longer, the mechanic carefully opened the vial. The liquid had no smell or defined color, resembling pure water. With delicate gestures, he managed to get the boy to drink a few drops. The child didn't resist, as if he instinctively knew that it would do him good. After that, he carried the boy in his arms and took him inside the hospital, explaining the situation to the on-duty doctors. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. The mechanic returned daily to the hospital to visit the boy, bringing his own daughter along. The little one, despite her frailty, immediately felt affection for the abandoned child. It was she who first noticed something extraordinary happening. On the 3rd day after taking the mysterious liquid, the boy began to blink his eyes differently, as if he was trying to focus on something. On the 5th day, he turned his head in the direction of where voices were coming from. On the 7th day, to the astonishment of the entire medical team, he babbled his first incomprehensible syllables. The child's recovery defied any known scientific explanation. The doctors performed test after test, consulted specialists, but no one could understand how someone who was born with multiple sensory impairments was gradually regaining all of their capabilities. The case became a sensation at the hospital, with professionals from other states coming to observe the inexplicable phenomenon. The news soon leaked to the local press. Journalists began to surround the hospital, trying to interview the mechanic who had found the child. He tried to remain discreet, but the media pressure grew every day. The story of the miraculous cure spread quickly through the media, reaching the news and social media. It was through one of these reports that the information reached the ears of someone who had been searching for answers for years. On the other side of town, in a luxurious mansion located in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, a 30-year-old woman watched the news with growing agitation. She was known in all social circles as one of the wealthiest people in the region, owning a fortune built through smart investments in stocks and diversified applications that earned her millionaire dividends. Her beauty was stunning, but her eyes carried a deep sadness that no amount of money could cure. 4 years ago, her only son had been kidnapped from the mansion when he was just a few-month-old baby. Since then, she had hired the best private investigators, offered astronomical rewards, and used all of her financial resources in the desperate search for the missing child. When she saw the images of the cured boy on television, her heart almost stopped. The child's physical characteristics, especially the shape of his eyes and the color of his hair, were identical to those of her family. More than that, the boy's age corresponded exactly to the time that her son had been missing. She felt her legs tremble as she gripped the remote control tightly, increasing the volume to hear every detail of the report. That same night, she mobilized her security team and private investigators to locate both the child and the mysterious man who had helped him. She had enough money to move mountains, and she was determined to find out if that boy was really her lost son. Something in the back of her heart said yes, and for the first time in 4 years, she allowed herself to feel a spark of hope. Meanwhile, the mechanic returned home after another day at the hospital, carrying his sleeping daughter in his arms. He had no idea that his simple and quiet life was about to be completely transformed by forces he never imagined existed. Morning arrived with a storm of events that the mechanic could never have predicted. He was still finishing breakfast with his daughter when insistent knocks on the door made him jump. Outside, 3 men in dark suits waited, accompanied by a woman who radiated elegance and determination, even dressed simply so as not to attract attention. The millionaire businesswoman had spent the entire night analyzing every frame of the television report, enlarging the images of the cured boy and comparing them with photographs of her missing son. Every trait confirmed her deepest suspicions. She couldn't sleep, consumed by the urgency to find answers that could finally fill the devastating void she had carried for years. When the mechanic opened the door, their eyes met for the first time. He was disconcerted by the presence of that dazzling woman, whose penetrating gaze seemed to see through his soul. She, in turn, felt a strange acceleration of her heart upon seeing that striking-looking man, whose calloused hands contrasted with the gentleness in his dark eyes. Without mincing words, she introduced herself and explained the reason for her visit. She needed to know every detail about how he had found the boy, and especially about the mysterious liquid that had caused the inexplicable cure. The mechanic hesitated, instinctively distrustful. Rich people had always brought problems to people like him, and that woman clearly belonged to a world completely different from his. The tension in the air was palpable when she offered a substantial amount of money just to talk. He politely refused, explaining that he did not do anything for financial gain. This response genuinely surprised her. In her world of business and million-dollar investments, she rarely found someone who refused money, especially when the need was evident by the humble condition of the house. During the conversation that followed in the small living room, the mechanic's daughter watched the elegant visitor curiously. The girl, despite her physical frailty, had a keen perception and noticed something special in the way the woman looked at her, with a maternal tenderness that seemed genuine. The little girl approached timidly and, to everyone's surprise, reached out to touch the millionaire's face. That simple gesture broke the first barriers between the two worlds. The businesswoman felt tears well up in her eyes as she felt the child's delicate touch, painfully remembering the son she had lost. The mechanic, observing the emotional reaction of that apparently strong woman, began to understand that behind all that wealth, there was a deep pain, similar to the one he knew well. He decided to tell her about the vial left by his grandfather, omitting only some details about the exact circumstances of the inheritance. He explained that the old researcher had worked in pharmaceutical labs for decades, developing experimental substances that never reached the market. He mentioned the specific instructions he had received about using the liquid only in cases of extreme need. The millionaire's eyes widened when he mentioned pharmaceutical labs. A disturbing connection began to form in her mind. Her late husband had owned one of the leading pharmaceutical companies in the region, killed in a suspicious accident 5 years earlier, shortly after the birth of her son. She had always suspected that there was more behind that tragedy than the authorities were able to discover. Cautiously, she mentioned the name of the pharmaceutical company that had belonged to her husband. The mechanic visibly paled. It was exactly the same lab where his grandfather had worked in the last decades of his life. The coincidence was too disturbing to be ignored. For the first time, both realized that their destinies could be intertwined in ways they never imagined. The revelation created an atmosphere charged with mystery and tension. The millionaire proposed that they jointly investigate the possible links between the laboratory, the miraculous liquid, and the disappearance of her son. She argued that she had unlimited financial resources to hire the best investigators, while he possessed unique information about the substance that had caused the extraordinary cure. The mechanic found himself divided between the natural distrust he felt for people of higher social class and the growing attraction he was beginning to feel for that woman. There was something in her disguised vulnerability that deeply touched his protective heart. At the same time, he feared that getting involved with someone so rich and powerful could bring unpredictable consequences to his simple life and to the safety of his daughter. While pondering the proposal, worrying news arrived from the hospital. The cured boy had disappeared during the early hours of the morning without leaving a trace. The security cameras had mysteriously stopped working exactly at the time of the disappearance, and no employee could explain how a child had managed to leave a highly monitored hospital unnoticed. The news of the disappearance hit the millionaire like a punch to the stomach. After years of searching for her son, she had finally found a concrete clue, only to see it slip through her fingers again. Her pain was so palpable that the mechanic felt an irresistible urge to console her, momentarily forgetting the social differences that separated them. When he gently placed his hand on her shoulder, offering words of comfort, an electric current ran through both of their bodies. The simple touch awakened sensations that neither of them expected to feel. She didn't remember the last time someone had touched her with such genuine tenderness, without interest in her fortune. He had never felt such an intense connection with someone he barely knew. The intimate moment was interrupted by the arrival of a private investigator hired by the businesswoman. The man brought disturbing information. There was evidence that the boy's disappearance had not been casual, but rather orchestrated by people who knew details about his medical condition and about the treatment he had received. Even more disturbing was the discovery that someone had discreetly broken into her husband's abandoned laboratory the night before, taking specific documents on experimental research. The connection between all the events was becoming impossible to ignore. Powerful forces were moving in the shadows, and both the mechanic and the millionaire found themselves at the center of a plot much bigger than they imagined. That night, while she returned to her solitary mansion and he put his daughter to sleep, both couldn't stop thinking about each other. The mutual attraction was undeniable, but the obstacles seemed insurmountable. She carried the weight of a fortune she had built with million-dollar investments and the pain of a devastating loss. He struggled daily to survive with dignity, taking care of a sick child alone. What neither of them knew was that they were being watched from a distance by someone who had a great interest in keeping certain secrets buried forever. The days that followed the boy's disappearance brought a series of disturbing revelations that shook the structures of both protagonists' lives. The millionaire businesswoman couldn't focus on her billion-dollar investments, putting aside important meetings about applications in bitcoins and international funds. Her mind was completely consumed by the search for answers. The mechanic, in turn, began to notice strange movements around his house and workshop. Cars with darkened windows passed slowly by the street several times a day, and he had the constant feeling of being watched. Concern for his daughter's safety kept him awake at night, alternating between checking the door locks and watching out the window. The connection between them deepened when she offered protection for the sick child, insisting that they stay in the security wing of her mansion until they discovered who was behind the veiled threats. Initially, he resisted the offer, his pride wounded by the idea of accepting charity from someone so wealthy. However, when his daughter had a severe respiratory attack in the middle of the night, it was she who showed up with a private ambulance and the best doctors in the city. Seeing that powerful woman hold his daughter in her arms during the ride to the hospital, whispering words of comfort with tears in her eyes, something broke inside the mechanic's chest. He realized that behind all that wealth, there was a genuinely kind heart, bruised by loss, but still capable of loving unconditionally. During the girl's hospitalization, they spent entire nights at the hospital, talking about their lives, fears, and dreams. She told him about the loneliness she felt since the loss of her husband and son, how her billions in net worth couldn't fill the emotional void she carried. He shared the difficulties of raising a child alone, the daily sacrifices, and the constant fear of not being enough to give his daughter everything she deserved. It was during one of those intimate conversations that she revealed disturbing details about her late husband's pharmaceutical company. In the last months before the accident, he had become paranoid and secretive, talking about revolutionary discoveries that could change the world of medicine, but also about powerful forces that wanted to prevent these discoveries from reaching the public. The mechanic felt a chill upon hearing this information. His grandfather had mentioned similar things before he died, warning about people who would do anything to keep certain experimental treatments away from the reach of the common population. The substance in the vial was not just a miracle cure, but it represented a direct threat to the astronomical profits of the traditional medical industry. The first major twist happened when they gained access to the laboratory's personal files. Hidden in a secret safe in her husband's private office, they found documents that revealed the existence of a medical cartel that deliberately controlled the most lucrative treatments in the region. The group was led by influential figures who had financial interests in keeping certain diseases without a definitive cure. Even more shocking was discovering that the current director of County General Hospital, where the boy had been treated, was one of the main members of this criminal organization. He had orchestrated the child's kidnapping years earlier, using him as a guinea pig for illegal experiments, taking advantage of his multiple disabilities as a perfect condition for testing. The tension between the protagonists intensified when they realized they were dealing with adversaries much more dangerous than they imagined. During a particularly violent thunderstorm, while they were analyzing the documents in the mansion's library, the physical proximity between them became almost unbearable. When she tripped over some papers scattered on the floor, he held her by the arms, and for a moment they were dangerously close. The mutual desire was palpable in the charged air of the stormy night. His lips were just inches from hers, when conscience struck him like lightning. He pulled away abruptly, fighting against his own feelings. How could he allow himself to love someone whose net worth represented more money than he would ever see in his entire life? How could he offer her the simple life of a mechanic when she was accustomed to luxury and sophistication? The rejection hurt her deeply, not because it wounded her ego, but because for the first time in years she had felt genuinely desired for who she was, not for what she possessed. That night, she cried alone in her room, questioning whether it was possible to find true love when one had so much money that people never knew if the intentions were pure. The second twist came through an anonymous call they received in the middle of the night. A voice, electronically distorted, informed them that the missing boy was alive, but would be used in more dangerous experiments if they didn't stop investigating the medical cartel. The threat was clear. Either they gave up seeking the truth, or the child would pay the price. This revelation forced them to make a crucial decision. She could use her wealth to hire mercenaries and private investigators, but that would put the boy at even greater risk. He knew people on the streets, contacts from the underprivileged neighborhoods that could help without arousing suspicion, but that would mean exposing his sick daughter to unnecessary dangers. The third twist happened when they discovered that they weren't the only ones looking for the child. An international human rights organization had detected suspicious movements related to the trafficking of children for illegal medical experiments. The case was gaining much larger dimensions than a simple kidnapping. During the tense days that followed, the emotional connection between them deepened even further. She began to care for his daughter with a maternal dedication that surprised and deeply touched him. She saw the fragile girl as a second chance to exercise the love that she hadn't been able to give to her own missing son. The mechanic, observing this transformation, began to question his prejudices about wealthy people. He realized that she was genuinely suffering, that her wealth didn't protect her from the deepest human pain. More than that, he began to understand that perhaps true love was priceless, not dependent on wealth or social status. The fourth twist arrived through a discovery in the laboratory's files that completely changed their understanding about past events. Her husband hadn't died in a casual accident. He had discovered that members of the medical cartel planned to use his own son as a guinea pig for extreme experiments, taking advantage of the fact that the child had privileged access to the most advanced treatments. Desperate to protect his family, he had faked his own death and hidden his son in a safe place, leaving coded clues so that his wife could find them when it was safe. The problem was that the clues were so complex that she would need help to decipher them, and he had anticipated that this help would come from someone specific, the grandson of the researcher who kept the last sample of the experimental formula. This revelation left them stunned. Their entire encounter had not been a coincidence, but part of a plan elaborated by a man desperate to protect his family and ensure that the miracle cure reached the people who really needed it, not stayed in the hands of those who wanted to profit from suffering. That night, while they processed the implications of this discovery, both understood that they were being tested by fate in ways they never imagined possible. The discovery that her husband might be alive completely transformed the dynamic between the protagonists. The millionaire businesswoman found herself torn between the hope of reuniting with the man she loved and the genuine feeling she had developed for the mechanic. He, in turn, struggled with the guilt of having fallen in love with a married woman, even if her husband had been presumably dead for years. Deciphering the clues left in the laboratory files took 3 weeks of intense work. Each symbol, each seemingly random number hidden in the documents, formed a complex map that would lead them to the place where her husband had hidden with his son. During this period, the emotional tension between them grew exponentially, fueled by the forced proximity and the secrets they shared. The mechanic's daughter, who had completely recovered thanks to the first-class medical care provided by her wealth, became the link that kept them together even in moments of greatest internal conflict. The girl had become deeply attached to that elegant woman who treated her with maternal affection and frequently asked when she would become her new mother. These innocent questions cut through both of their hearts like sharp knives. He knew that he couldn't promise his daughter something that might never happen. She saw herself increasingly emotionally involved with that fragile child, but feared that her feelings were just a way to compensate for the absence of her own son. The fifth twist happened when they finally located the address indicated by the clues. A secret clinic located in a neighboring country, specializing in advanced medical research and witness protection. Her husband had spent the last 5 years developing the formula left by the mechanic's grandfather, perfecting it and creating an international free distribution network. The trip to the clinic was charged with tension and expectation. During the flight, she held his hand, trembling with nervousness and fear of what they would find. He squeezed her delicate fingers, offering the comfort he could, even knowing that this gesture might be the last intimate moment they would share. The reunion was devastatingly emotional. The husband had aged visibly during the years of isolation, but his eyes shone with tears of relief upon seeing his wife. The son, now 5 years old, had grown healthy and strong, with no memory of the first months of his life when he was used as a guinea pig by criminals. The explanation he offered was even more shocking than they had imagined. He had discovered that the medical cartel planned not only to use his son in experiments, but also to eliminate the entire family to keep the secrets. The only way to protect them had been to fake his own death and disappear with the child, leaving clues that could only be deciphered with the specific help of the researcher's grandson. He had orchestrated the entire encounter between her and the mechanic, knowing that they would need each other to survive the threats and to ensure that the miracle cure reached the right people. During the years of exile, he had created a secret international foundation that distributed free experimental treatments to underprivileged children around the world. The sixth twist came when he revealed that he had discreetly monitored her life during all this time, witnessing the development of feelings between her and the mechanic. His next words surprised everyone. He felt no anger or jealousy, but rather gratitude for having found someone capable of loving his wife genuinely, without interest in her fortune. The emotional conflict reached its peak when he proposed a solution that no one had anticipated. He wanted to legally dissolve the marriage, allowing her to follow her heart, while he would dedicate himself entirely to the humanitarian mission he had created. He argued that true love couldn't be forced or maintained by obligation, and that she deserved to be happy with someone who loved her for who she really was. The most difficult decision of her life was before her. During 3 days at the clinic, she oscillated between loyalty to the past and passion for the present. The mechanic, deeply respecting the situation, maintained emotional distance, mentally preparing to accept whatever choice she made. It was his daughter who, inadvertently, provided the clarity that everyone needed. The girl had become so attached to her son that she cried every time the adults talked about separation. Observing the two children playing together, like true siblings, everyone realized that fate had created an unconventional but genuinely loving family. The seventh twist happened when they discovered that the medical cartel had located the secret clinic. They had few hours before mercenaries arrived to eliminate everyone involved in the development of the free cure. It was necessary to evacuate immediately and separate to protect the information and the lives involved. At that moment of extreme danger, she made her final decision. She chose to stay with the mechanic and the two children, not out of impulse or passion, but because she recognized that she had found in him the life partner she had always sought. The love she felt was mature, based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine concern for each other's well-being. The husband received the decision with serenity and understanding. He blessed the union of the two, asking only that they take good care of his son and that they continue the humanitarian work he had initiated. Before leaving for a new hiding place, he gave her legal documents transferring half of his fortune to the International Foundation and the other half to a joint account for her and the mechanic. The eighth and final twist revealed that everything had been carefully planned from the beginning. The mechanic's grandfather and her husband had been secret partners in the development of the formula, knowing that one day their families would unite to continue the work. The liquid in the vial was not just a cure, but the first step of a medical revolution that would change millions of lives. 6 months later, the mechanic and the millionaire were married, living in a comfortable but not ostentatious home, raising together the 2 children who had become inseparable siblings. He had left the workshop to dedicate himself entirely to the foundation they managed together, using his practical knowledge to implement treatments in underprivileged communities. She had learned to use her wealth more meaningfully, investing in independent medical research and creating a distribution network that ensured that revolutionary discoveries reached those who needed them most for free. Her investments in stocks and bitcoins now had a social purpose, generating funds that saved lives instead of just accumulating wealth. The old life of superficial luxury had been replaced by an existence rich in purpose and genuine love. In the intimate moments of the night, when they put the children to sleep, they reflected on how fate had conspired to unite them through pain, transforming individual tragedies into a collective force of healing and hope. The son she had lost returned not only as a recovered child, but as a symbol that families can be formed by the heart, not just by blood. His daughter gained not only a loving mother but also a brother, and a life without the limitations imposed by poverty. A year after the wedding, while they were overseeing the opening of yet another free clinic for underprivileged children, they received a letter from her husband. He wrote from some remote location, where he continued developing new treatments, expressing gratitude for them, having found true love in each other, and for continuing the work he had begun. The letter ended with a phrase that perfectly summarized everyone's journey. True love is not that which binds us to the past, but that which frees us to build a better future for all. That night, lying side by side watching the stars through the window, she murmured that she had never imagined that her fortune could buy something as valuable as the happiness she felt in that moment. He replied that he had finally understood that true wealth was not measured in money, but in the ability to love and be loved unconditionally. The 2 children slept peacefully in the next room, dreaming of a future where the difference between rich and poor would be measured not by what one possessed, but by how much one was willing to share with the world. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment, giving a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.